and welcome to this week's edition of the Midweek Mailbag. And I want to start off immediately by apologizing for dropping this episode on Thursday instead of the typical Wednesday, but my Wednesday schedule was hectic. So I really appreciate your guys' patience and understanding for this week's midweek episode drop. Now, as a reminder, guys, if you want your questions answered, you can just comment on any of my content, YouTube, Instagram, or you can email me at TJacksunpacks@gmail.com. Now, in terms of today's episode, these are the questions or the topics I will be taking on based on viewer requests. So, first thing I'll be looking at is Kamala Harris's "I told you so" viral moment. I will also be discussing 3 policy changes, my top 3 that I would like to see tackled. The stock market and tariffs, there's going to be a question about that and Donald Trump's handling of that. And then someone asked a little bit about my background, and I took that as my education background. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about that, and then I'm going to finish with previewing Sunday's episode. So first question was, what is your reaction to Kamala Harris's "I told you so" quote? So if you guys have not seen it, Kamala Harris made a viral comment at the Leading Women Defined Summit, and a viewer reached out to ask my take, my opinion on this viral moment. Now, I want to kind of get you guys involved. So if you have not seen it yet, I'm going to go ahead and play the clip, and then you will get my take after so you can kind of watch it unbiased. So I'm going to roll that clip now.
Because, there were many things that we knew would happen. Many things. I'm not here, so I told you so.
So my overall opinion of this is not a good look for Harris and ostensibly Democrats, because she is associated with the Democratic Party. Particularly when I follow media pretty close, I have not seen Harris speak out very much at all in these kind of times. And I know she lost the election, but when you've largely been quiet during a moment where people are feeling legitimate pain. Keep in mind, guys, we have had mass layoffs. People are getting disappeared without due process. The economy's all over the place. So people are going through legitimate pain. And I just saw recently Trump's approval rating is at like 43%. So it's tanking. It's not good to go on stage and talk about you telling people so, whether it's true or not, and then backing that up with basically laughing while people are feeling, like I said, pain. The reality of the situation is the Democrats lost the election because they did not do a good job conveying their message. It is a politician's job to win the electorate's vote. It is not like the voters' responsibility to bow down. Even though I voted for Harris, she would have obviously been my choice. If you've been watching this podcast, that's no shocker. But the point in the political strategy is you got to stop blaming the voters. And to this point, Tim Walz, so her running mate, actually broke away a little bit from this and said that exact type of thing that I was mentioning, which was pleasant to see, which was more reflective. Like, why didn't our message connect as opposed to like, "I told you so"? So I also think this comment is what a lot of Republicans hate about the Democratic Party, which is this idea that I'm better than you. And like, I'm snarky and I'm arrogant. And I unfortunately think this clip came off that way. And I just don't find it to be productive, strategic, politically smart, even if it may be true. So those are 2 separate things, guys. What I said, like, I predicted many of these things that are coming because they were fairly obvious, but they didn't do a good job communicating it. And that lies at the feet of the Democrats and Harris and Walz in that campaign. So I really was not feeling that clip whatsoever. So hope that addressed that question if you were a viewer who posed that. Now, moving on to question number 2. And the question that is really on, I think, a lot of people's minds, which is it possible Trump is tanking the economy, or specifically the stock market, was what the person asked, on purpose? I want to preface this by saying any question that starts with, is it possible that Trump, the answer is yes. This man is not guided by morals, principle. There's no ethical code he's trying to go by. So anything is on the table. He is largely just guided by money for himself, not for us, not for everyone, but money for himself and power. So with that being said, absolutely, yes, it is possible that he is tanking it on purpose because he doesn't really care how it's affecting like the average person or a retiree who may be stressed, who may have just lost tens of thousands of dollars in their retirement fund. That's not really relevant to him. And particularly, guys, we have a political system, remember, and this precedes Trump, and this includes almost every politician. We have legalized bribery. So, and we have politicians who can participate in the stock market. So we basically have a system where one man can tank, the stock market with tariffs, because that can be done through just unilaterally by him. Like he doesn't need approval to do the tariffs through Congress. So his individual actions and him knowing what he is going to do with those tariffs, he can then utilize that in our corrupt political system to enrich himself. So that is 100% on the board. But like, if you did ask this question, my better, or like what I want to direct our focus more to is like, all of this is unnecessary and it's causing harm to Americans. The market, guys, was doing fine under Biden, and that is me being no fan of Biden generally in the administration. Preferable to what we're seeing now and what we saw to Trump's first term, in my opinion, by many degrees. But there's just a much better way to handle this. And there have to be some legality concerns here with how they are dealing with the stock market. But we have rampant corruption in our political system. So whether or not that will be addressed, I doubt it until Citizens United is overturned. And until the Supreme Court decision that basically made President a king, Supreme Court, I think it was Supreme Court v. Trump, that needs to be overturned too for there to be actual levers to address this. But back to the root of the question, is it possible that he's taking it on purpose? Sure. Is that the right strategy? Should that be what he's doing and playing with people's retirement funds and investments? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right, moving on to the next question. What are the top 3 issues that you want to see tackled? So I kind of paraphrase this question that the person asked to fit it in here because I didn't want to do a full episode length, but 3 issues I want to see tackled most. And guys, I actually ordered these in a hierarchy. So I have 1, 2, and 3. And I am very curious to hear whether you guys agree or disagree, have a different top 3 would change around the top 3 I'm going to give you, because I thought about this very hard and deeply because I wanted to make sure that I put these in the correct order that I thought made the most sense. So the number 1 issue that I want to see tackled is healthcare. If we are not healthy, whether that's like being alive or just feeling well enough to, go to work, to spend time with kids, to your kids, to spend time with your family and your friends, nothing else matters. Okay. We need to completely revamp our healthcare system. We need a government funded, provided healthcare like basically every other country in the world has. We have a barbaric system in the US where basically you are one diagnosis away at any second from filing for bankruptcy. We are extreme, guys, on healthcare, not the rest of the world. And I want to add on top of this, guys, because our healthcare is tied to our job, which is, once again, insane. It keeps people in professions they don't want to be in simply for the healthcare. So that also leads to a greater degree of misery and unhappiness amongst the public and an inability to actually do the job and career you want if you're worried about healthcare. It should not be that way. So that is the number 1 thing. There should be a universal paid system guaranteed through the government so that people have access and have the opportunity to live healthy and happy lives without being financially ruined. Second thing, and this is a recent change for me. So what I have third was second before, but now number 2 for me is wealth inequality. And the reason that has moved up to number 2 for me is it is so outrageously out of control. And there are no safeguards currently or mechanisms that are addressing this. The current administration is not addressing this. So it is only going to get worse and worse and worse, and it is already rampantly out of control. We need to tax the rich more. Okay. The people who are against taxing the rich more, guys, are 95% of the time the rich. Stop listening to rich people trying to convince you that they don't need to pay their fair share. You got to think of the conflict of interest there. The rich are basically buying up everything, guys, and that is why it is such a struggle for the average person. And I'm sorry if you heard that background noise. I'm not sure if you did, but that is why it is such a struggle for the everyday person, is because the rich are basically controlling everything. The 1% have access to unlimited resources to control and bend the country to their will. Increasing the tax rate, guys, on the top 1% redistributes resources, so we have better schools, better infrastructure, better healthcare, well-funded firefighters or police stations, depending on how you want that funded, right? That's a whole nother episode. But guys, taxing the rich will lead to a more equitable society because it redistributes resources, okay? And where we're at now with our rampant wealth inequality and income inequality, because we need to increase the minimum wage, is the work of the average everyday employee like me and you disproportionately goes to the top. So that worker who is delivering packages for Amazon, or working in the mail or the delivery packaging room, or a Starbucks barista, for instance, the amount they are working and the amount they are generating for their companies, they are getting far less back in return than in years past. And most of that money is disproportionately funneling up to the top positions, those corporate CEO positions. And that is part of the reason that wealth inequality is skyrocketing, okay? So that, displacement of income along with our broken tax system. So that is number 2 for me, addressing wealth inequality. Now, what has slid down to number 3 to me, which was previously number 2, is education reform. And that is not because education is not a huge problem, but I believe the wealth inequality issue is so extreme, and our sense of hyper-capitalism we have in the United States, your achievement now in education does not necessarily net you the same impact it did decades ago. And what I mean by that is we have a, horde of millennials who came out of college, did all the right things, right? Got their degrees, and then left college and couldn't find jobs, right? Because that opportunity is not the same that it used to be. The access to the American dream isn't the same it used to be in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So that's kind of one of the reasons I moved it down. Basically, tackling the wealth inequality can actually allow education attainment to matter more, if that makes sense. Now, what I'm unfortunately seeing is we are moving towards a more privatized model in education. And I know some of you are for that, but what I want you to understand what that does is people who are more affluent and who can navigate the system will be able to place their students in the higher performing schools, generally speaking. And then certain families and communities are going to be left out in the dust, basically, to struggle in underfunded school systems. So that is this concern with the privatization, is leaving so many communities behind. But that seems to be where we are moving. My want for education reform is more investment in public schools, looking at a lot of models across the world, because guys, we're nowhere near number 1 in education. So there's plenty of places to improve, but a lot of the best schools, guys, they invest heavily in public schools. That's where their money is pumped into, is the public model, and they pay teachers more, and there's just a different expectation there. So those are my top 3 issues. Once again, I would love to hear what you guys think below in the comments. But my 3 in order are healthcare, wealth inequality, and then education reform. Now, last question, which actually leads very nicely into Sunday's episode. Someone just asked me what my background was in, and I took this to mean education. So I'm going to take it down that road. And I apologize if that's not what you meant. Please reach back out and let me know if you need to clarify. But I basically, guys, grew up in the DMV area. If you're not from that area, that's DC, Maryland, Virginia. It's just an acronym basically for the area. And I went to University of Maryland, College Park. Yes, go Terps. So at Maryland, I got a degree in broadcast journalism. So I do have a journalism background. I've never practiced it. I want to be clear because I'm big on transparency. But I did go to school 4 years for broadcast journalism. I actually wanted to get into sports originally. And I also double majored in criminology and criminal justice. Now, my time at University of Maryland, I think, were some of the 4 best years of my life because I really got to experiment and figure out what I wanted. And I found my love for actually education while I was at Maryland through a program called Success, where I was president of that program. And the goal was to increase graduation and retention rates for students of color on campus, but mainly for Black students who are on campus. So through my role, I was able to do a lot of interviews with staff, professors, educators, and successful students. So students who, have achieved academically or balanced, extracurriculars, are working in academics. And it really fueled my love for education and connecting with people. And I have always done well in school generally, but I didn't really love education and learning until my time at Maryland. It was more before then that I just did well in school because I knew doing well and having good grades gave you opportunity in life. But I didn't inherently love learning until really that interview period with talking to so many different people and hearing about their experience. And from there, guys, I graduated and I've basically been in education ever since. I do also have a master's degree in ed tech leadership. And with that, I'm going to do a little passion project, I think, this summer alongside my wife, who has also worked in education for over a decade, dealing with math. So that's kind of a separate thing. But I hope that answers your question in general. But overall, guys, I think that's a great question. I appreciate who asked that. And I'm going to share more in Sunday's episode, but I believe all my experiences, and I think that's true of everyone, right? Your lived experiences lead you to shape the view of your world. And where I land politically has to do with a lot of the background I just shared. And I think that leads me very well into Sunday's episode, where I am going to be covering or unpacking, I got to use that unpacking term more, but unpacking why diversity matters. And I think, guys, in today's political climate with what we're seeing and the attack on DEI, even though they miscategorize what DEI actually is, I think it's time to have a reset and a discussion about the fact we are a nation of immigrants. And one of the things that makes us so beautiful is our differences. So that is what I will be covering a little bit on Sunday. But for now, that wraps up this week's midweek mailbag. Thank you again for joining me a day late or whatever day or week you may be watching this. And please continue to submit your questions. Contact information, guys, will be below in the description. And do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. So thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, this was TJacks Unpacks on this week's midweek mailbag. Thank you for watching and being part of a growing progressive community. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have the time, check out some of my other episodes you can see around me. Thank you.